Quazi here. Before the modern day secret societies like the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and the like, there was one ancient society that fathered them all. They were known as the Knights Templar. But there was something extraordinary about the Templars, unlike their modern counterparts. The funny thing is, they didn't even start off being known as Templars. They were established in the year 1119 as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ, because they were extremely poor and were founded on the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. The Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ wasn't really such an inspiring name, so they later rebranded to the Knights Templar. What most people didn't know about the Templars was that they were charged with guarding extremely powerful religious relics like the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. It was well known that relics like the Ark of the Covenant were highly dangerous for the common mortal. Jewish and Christian holy scriptures dictate that the Ark of the Covenant can be carried only by the Levites, who constituted the ancient Jewish priestly class. They must carry the Ark by using two wooden poles inserted through rings on its sides, as touching the Ark itself will result in immediate death at the hands of God. And according to the second book of Samuel, when the Levite Uzzah touched the Ark with his bare hand, God immediately killed him. Why could the Knights Templar be trusted to handle highly volatile objects like this? See, the Knights Templar organization consisted of three main levels. The first level consisted of the publicly known Knights Templar, who performed Templar duties throughout Europe and elsewhere in the world. The second level was made of the lesser known Knights Templar, who were responsible for teaching and maintaining the purity of the organization's spiritual techniques. The third and final level of the Knights Templar was kept secret to the public. The third level of Knights were members of the legendary Inner Circle, who safeguarded and used the priceless treasures from the Ark of the Covenant. See, priceless treasure is an ancient term used to describe the benefits one receives from sacred teachings. Priceless is a term used to describe something that is beyond material wealth. Priceless treasure refers to spiritual wealth. In this case, priceless treasures refers to the sacred teachings and techniques that had been carved into the stones of the covenant by Moses and the others. The Knights Templar, early in the 12th century, recovered the Ark of the Covenant that was buried in 588 BC, before Jerusalem was captured by the Babylonians. All knights who became members of the knighthood, known in the 12th, 13th, and 14th centuries as the Knights Templar, were taught certain spiritual techniques that were carved upon these stones or tablets that were carried inside of the Ark of the Covenant. As select knights progressed in their spiritual abilities, they were taught higher and higher levels of these secret spiritual techniques. What were these secret techniques that they possessed? Although I suspect most of these were either destroyed or were kept under secret lock and key, we can actually gain subtle hints by understanding the code of the Knights Templar and catch a glimpse of their advanced knowledge of reality. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the four main teachings of the Knights Templar that allow them to gain complete control over their minds, that society back when they were in power, and ultimately gain access to a higher faculty. So with that, let's jump right in. So to fully understand the depth of the spiritual knowledge and advanced principles that the Templars had access to, we really have to understand the code and the principles via which they lived. And I've uncovered four main principles that I've seen transfer onto every single area of life. It relates to ancient teachings from yoga, Hermeticism, ancient Egyptian knowledge, which all corroborate to show how reality is created and how one can live their best life. And these are really, really deep esoteric principles. So I'm going to be backing them up with actual examples. So let's get to principle number one that the Templars lived by. The first principle that was really, really important, that's one of the most fundamental principles of the Knights Templar, is to support a higher calling. They lived in complete service to a higher truth, and they were always talking about and always focused on surrendering to God. So the first principle is the principle of surrender. Their main mission was to serve God. Everything was in service of God and protecting the teachings. This really directly corroborates with ancient yogic knowledge. Why I say that is because in ancient yogic knowledge, Patanjali, thousands of years ago, talked about the concept of vairagya and abhyasa. Even though the Templars were fierce in their effort and in their sheer will, this effort had to be balanced out by their surrender to the mission itself. In order to achieve anything that you want in your life, you have to have a balance between effort and surrender. Have you ever noticed how whenever you're putting in too much effort, you're trying too hard to get a particular outcome? It never really happens. But one day you just completely forget about it. That partner you've been trying to attract, or that business revenue you've been trying to chase, or the thing that you wanted so bad to happen in your life. All of a sudden you forget all about it. You give up on it. All of a sudden it just spontaneously happens by itself. As soon as you give up on it or sort of surrender to it, it just happens naturally by itself. This is the principle that the Knights Templar live by. And I believe this is one of the fundamental principles. And understanding effort and surrender and how to balance the both. Looking into my personal life, when I got started in my entrepreneurial journey, I remember getting into sales. And this was back in 2019. I decided to quit my full-time job to go all in on my business, my coaching business. And I remember in the month of May 2019, the stakes were the highest. You know, I had to prove to my parents and I had to prove to others and I had to prove to myself that I could supplement the income from coaching to replace my 9-to-5 income. I remember getting onto sales call after sales call that month. And every single call that I got on, I remember being so needy and so attached to the sale. And the prospects could feel that needy energy from me. And I put way too much effort in there. And the more effort I put in, the more they were getting turned off. The more I needed the sale, the more they resisted. And that's when I realized what was happening. I was way too much in the effort and not too much in the surrender. I needed to surrender my attachment to the outcome. The outcome is not up to us. The outcome must be surrendered to God. In order to reach the sweet spot in any area of your life, you must surrender the outcome to God, or the higher power, or the universe, whatever you believe. The only thing you can judge yourself on are the efforts or the inputs that you put in. If you keep judging yourself based on the outcomes that you're getting in your life, you will always fail. You will always move up and down with the waves of life, because life happens in seasons. Sometimes you're going to have summer in life. Sometimes you're going to have spring. Sometimes you're going to go through a period of winter and bleakness and nothing's working out. What do you do then? You have to get detached from that. You have to unattach yourself from that. And the only way to do that is to find and strike this balance between effort and surrender. As soon as I did that in the month of May 2019, I was realizing what was happening. The following month, I did my first ever 8K month in June of 2019. In July of 2019, I did my first 12K month. And by August, I had my first 20K month in the business. And my deepest life goal was fulfilled. So that's the first, and I believe the most foundational principle that the Templars live by. Let's get to principle number 2. Principle number 2 is the principle of meditation. Now, this isn't your traditional sitting cross-legged like an Eastern yogi kind of meditation. No. When the Templars spoke of meditation, they actually spoke of it differently. They always meditated and contemplated on the teachings of the Bible and their mission, meaning they always kept the goal top of mind and they always focused on the teaching itself. Every single day, if you focus on one thing again and again, what happens? That thing is top of mind. Our minds have this mechanism called the reticular activating system. It's located in the subconscious mind. Whenever we focus on something, like if I ask you to think about a red car, all you can see is the picture of the red car. If I ask you, don't think about a red car right now, all you can think about is still that red car. You can't force yourself not to think about something, right? You can't resist something. You can only focus on content. That's how a reticular activating system works. What's funny though, is the more you keep focusing on the red car, the likelihood that you will notice red cars in your environment is much higher. That is just how the subconscious mind works. It's like a servo mechanism. It's target fixated. Have you ever been on the highway and you look at the car next to you and you try to avoid it, right? You tell yourself, oh, I'm going to move away from that red car. But the more you focus on avoiding the red car, the more you start to move towards it. The only way you can get away from the red car is by focusing on the road in front of you, okay? That's exactly the principle that the Knights Templar utilized. They focused on their mission. Instead of dwelling on what was happening and what was going wrong, they focused on their mission and on the purity of the teachings itself. So what you have to know from here is the key is to have your goal top of mind, but also there is another aspect of it. The knights were very, very intellectual, very intelligent beings, but they were also very, very faith-oriented, aka feeling-oriented, which means they had a very, very sharp and very, very well-balanced heart and mind. That's what needs to happen. We need to have a heart and mind coherence towards our goals. So the goal that you have, that you want to create in your life, the thing that you want in your life, you must think feelingly about it, as Neville Goddard would say. When you think feelingly about the goal and what life looks like once the goal has been achieved, guess what happens? You operate from that end state. You become one with the goal itself. This is what the Knights Templar were doing. They became one with their mission. They operated from the place that the mission was fulfilled. And it's no wonder that they were one of the richest, one of the most successful societies that ever lived. And they influenced the modern day societies we're seeing today. To give you an example how this principle completely changed my life, the principle of meditating with heart and mind coherence. Let's go back to that example of making a 20K month. I remember I set the goal to quit my 9-to-5 that I was so disappointed, so distraught, so trapped by. I set the goal that in 1 year time, by July of 2019, I would quit my job and make 20K a month from a business that I'm passionate about. And I didn't fully understand how that would happen. I just knew what I wanted, and I felt really good when I thought about the 20K month. For me, the 20K month meant freedom, no longer needing to go into a job, being able to work from wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And that's what I focused on. I thought about the number 20K a month, and then I felt what it would feel like to be a 20K a month business owner and what life would look like, what it would bring. And the more I meditated on that every single day, I visualized what life would look like. Every night before I fell asleep, I visualized, I looked at what life would look like once I achieved it. And guess what happened? August of 2019, I actually hit that goal. It took me 13 months, not 12. It took me 13 months, but I finally did it. I had my first $20,000 month, and my life was beyond what I'd even imagined. So this is the power of what happens when you keep a singular goal top of mind. You prime your RAS with that. And the best way to do that is to have heart and mind coherence. So this is the second principle. The third principle that the Templars lived by was the principle of the divine feminine. The Templars were very, very respectful of the feminine nature of God. Okay? They revered the feminine side of God. And they saw God to be made, mankind to be made in God's image. And that included both man and woman. But they understood that this feminine side to God was infinitely powerful. Really why this was because they were made to pledge chastity upon joining the order. Now, upon pledging chastity, they were not allowed to have any relations with females. They in turn had to channel that urge, that desire to have a relationship, that lacking of a feminine figure in their life to God, with connection to that feminine nature of God, which allowed them to stay more and more focused on their mission. In ancient yogic culture, they have a group called brahmacharyas who are also celibate, and they're celibate for their whole lives. And they do not participate in any sexual activity or masturbation or even ejaculation of any sort. They are celibate for their whole lives. What this is thought to do is transmute that sexual energy into your divine purpose. Instead of losing that sexual energy through expelling it, instead, like a conduit, you channel it up through your higher chakras. So it was very, very interesting that they were taking the vow of chastity because it allowed them to stay more and more focused on their mission. But what I believe that allowed them to do is channel their intrinsic motivations and all the drive that they had into intention, into their purpose. This is actually in line with one of the oldest principles of Hermeticism, which says gender isn't everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. And by connecting with a divine feminine, they were able to transmute their sex energy into their divine purpose to carry out the mission. And the key for you is to understand how energy can be transmuted from one form to another. If you are someone who is perhaps highly sexual in nature, or highly passionate, instead of thinking that's a bad thing, if you're someone who's angry, instead of thinking that it's a bad thing, oh, I shouldn't be angry, I should be more peaceful, think, how can I channel this into what I want for my life? And it could be a goal that you have that's related to wealth, finances. It could be a goal that you have in terms of your family, in terms of helping people, whatever it is. How can you channel what you've already got? So many people in the personal development industry are taught like, oh, you shouldn't be in low vibration states like anger and fear. It's complete BS. What you have to do is learn how to use what you've already got and transmute it to what you want. And that's what the Templars were able to do by transmuting their sexual energy. And finally, the fourth and final principle that the Templars live by, the principle of rightful action. The Templars believed that in order to develop spiritually, you had to take action. But this action couldn't just be mindless action. It had to be rightful action. It had to be intentional. So let me ask you a question right now. Whenever you're doing something, how many times do you just do it to get it done, as opposed to do it because you have a particular intention? Do it in a particular way. Do it from a particular place of being. So if I'm working on my business, or if I'm with my child, if I'm with my wife, if I'm with my family, most of the time, now that I'm conscious, I think, who am I being? When I'm with these people, when I'm doing these activities, what's the place that it's coming from? Because I want you to think about it this way. One person can say the exact same line in two different ways. The example I always like to use is, if I'm talking to a person that I'm attracted to, I could say hi to them from a place of neediness, the intent of I want to take something, or the intent of I feel good and grounded within myself and I want to give something. So in the former case, it would sound like, hey, how are you doing today? I'm trying to take something from them. But if I felt comfortable and good in myself and I only had value to give, I'd be like, hey, how are you doing today? Nice to meet you. You see, there's two different ways of saying the same thing. It's just coming from a different place. If I'm needy and my intention is to take, then it's going to come from a different place. It's going to not be rightful action. It is going to be action that makes me smaller, okay? When you come from a place of giving and service, your action becomes rightful action. And that is the principle of sacred activism. How can we transmute the lower intentions that we have when we're stuck in survival mentality, thinking we need to take something, to what can I give? How can I stay in alignment with my values and not do things in ways that I would be disappointed in? Because at the end of the day, the only person who can disappoint yourself is really you. You can never lie to yourself. You can lie to everyone, you can never lie to yourself. So it's not about what, it's more about how it's being done and who that's doing it. When you focus on the who you're being when you're doing it, the what actually takes the flavor that would make this who come to life. So what I mean by that is, if I were focusing on becoming an attractive person and I ask myself, hey, what would this attractive person do? If I was focusing on becoming a wealthy person or a successful business owner, and then from that place of being a successful business owner, I tackled my business and I would say, hey, what would the successful business owner do today? I want to make a video, but at the same time, I don't really feel like making a video. If I were a successful business owner, if I were this higher self quasi business owner that I am today, or video maker, whatever, what would I do? And the answer will naturally come to you. The key is to have that awareness on who you're becoming at every single moment, with every single action that you take. When you combine the action with proper intentionality and that who, the being behind it, the being behind the doing, then the right having follows, the right results follow. So to give you a direct example of this, how I use this in my life was I learned when I was making YouTube videos when I first started off, and I focused on taking, like, oh, I want to get more views and I want to get more clients. Let's make a video on this topic that's going to get a lot of views. Or let's make a video on this topic that, I can take a lot from. When I focused on taking in my videos and I made videos on what I thought would get me more views, guess what happened? I didn't get any views. It just didn't work out. When I shifted that focus on giving, like, hey, I'm making this video, what can I give away that people would really benefit from? And just not focus on taking at all. What do you think happened? More people started to come. More people started to watch the videos. More people started to become clients. Everything that I wanted, as soon as I gave up on it, as soon as I surrendered and just came from a place of pure giving, the rightful, intentional action, the higher self, focusing on that, everything fell into place by itself. So that's the power of sacred activism that the Knights Templar used. One of the deepest principles of reality is what's called the mirror principle. The essence of the mirror principle is that whatever internal image that I present to the mirror of reality, my internal image gets reflected out into my external reality. I can present an image to this mirror to get a reflection in the material organization of matter. So in essence, I can literally create my reality through my attitude, my internal identity on who I'm being. This is called the mirror principle. I made a comprehensive video on YouTube, around 50 minutes long, talking about the 4 working principles of the mirror. Once you understand this, you literally master your reality. You can click right here to access this. It's completely free for you to watch. I just want you to be able to benefit from it. This mirror principle is the sole reason that I went from nothing, looking forward to spending 40 years in a factory doing something that I was not passionate about at all, to building a 7-figure business, literally living the life of my dreams. Everything that I've ever wanted has manifested by the age of 26. And I want to share it with you, and I believe the mirror principle is one of the fundamental ideas behind it. And so many of our customers, so many of our viewers, I believe over 500,000 people viewed that video, if not 1 million. You can just click right here to watch it. It's completely free for you to access. I'm excited for you to benefit from that. I'll see you in this next video right now. Thanks.